I think everybody's always touched by the concept of saving a life, and that's truly what this is all about.
Hi, everyone. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to take a moment to give a shout out to my amazing Supercast subscribers. Your continued support means the world to me. As a Supercast member, you get exclusive access to the unfiltered, ad-free video versions of our Health Unchained interviews, raw, real, and packed with insights. You're not just supporting the show, you're fueling the conversations at the cutting edge of healthcare and blockchain innovation. So thank you for being a vital part of this journey. If you're interested in joining, you can learn more about Supercast in the episode description.
Hi, I'm your host, Ray Dogum, and welcome to Health Unchained. On this show, I will be speaking with healthcare entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and executives who are using blockchain technologies to revolutionize healthcare. These innovators are building the distributed infrastructure and diverse communities required for a trusted, secure, and decentralized healthcare ecosystem. Enjoy the show.
What is blockchain?
Was ist Blockchain?
What is blockchain?
The doctor will see you now.
Remember, the Health Unchained podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and we are not providing any sort of legal, financial, or medical advice. Please do your own research and due diligence before making any important decisions related to these matters. And now, please enjoy episode 126 of Health Unchained.
Welcome to Health Unchained. Our guests today are Laura Epstein, CEO and founder of Pulse Charter Connect, and Chris Tyler, Pulse's Chief Technology Officer. Laura has a background in aerospace engineering and holds her private pilot license. Chris has over 30 years of experience in technology, including 16 with IBM and 8 years with AT&T. At Pulse Charter Connect, the venture-backed startup is working to eliminate inefficiencies in the current organ transportation process by leveraging their platform to improve coordination and reduce costs. We'll be talking about decentralizing the organ transplant industry and how they optimize for better patient outcomes. Laura and Chris, welcome to the show.
I'm Laura Epstein, CEO of Pulse Charter Connect. We've had this company for a little over 2 years. In a prior life, I was a pilot and a systems engineer for the Federal Aviation Administration, and then moved out to Chicago, where I'm based now, to pursue my MBA at University of Chicago.
You've hit on the highlights, right, of my professional career, 30 plus years in software, either as a software developer, product leader, or in software sales or technical software sales. Been around software pretty much my whole life. I started writing code when I was in ninth grade. So, and I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
In your background, or biography, I saw you're also part of you volunteer at the ALS, or an organization. You want to talk a little bit about that?
While I was in software sales, one of my peers that I worked with for a long time, he eventually was diagnosed with ALS. He started a foundation called ALS Never Surrender to improve the data gathering around ALS patients, mostly to understand the progression of the disease. And basically, when someone's diagnosed with ALS, they're kind of given 3 to 5 years to live. And they say, come in and every 6 months, we'll check on you and keep you comfortable. That's pretty much all they get. So they don't get a whole lot of data knowing how the disease progresses. So we started developing an app that would collect that more objectively. They would collect data of, okay, could you tie your shoes today? Could you feed yourself? We wanted to know what's the range of motion, what's their speed degradation, and so forth. So yeah, been doing that for probably about 7-8 years.
Yeah, and I think that's important to highlight just because data in the healthcare sector specifically is a different beast altogether. So having that background makes you qualified to be in this position for Pulse Charter Connect. Maybe we can get started with what is the problem being solved at Pulse Charter Connect and who are you solving it for?
Sure. So we're solving it for a multitude of parties across the spectrum. So really, the root of the problem is that when an organ is available, there's a limited amount of time it can be outside the body and be viable for a recipient. So what we're doing is we're streamlining the coordination and the transportation of these organs and surgical teams so that they can be successfully transplanted into the patient. And this oftentimes requires the recipient surgical team being driven to an airport, flown to another location, driven to the donor hospital to do the surgery and procure the organ, and then be driven back to do the surgery again within the recipient. So there's a lot of different legs to coordinate, many different parties that are all involved. So we're working throughout that entire process with both the coordination, the communication, and everything in between.
And who's involved in this? So obviously the recipient, patient, and also all the people that are involved with transporting the organ or with person, depending on what kind of organ you're talking about.
Mhm.
Um, EMTs, like who's involved in this sort of situation?
Yeah. So oftentimes, if we're looking at a heart procurement, so the recipient surgical team and then maybe a first assist or a tech will go out with them. So 3 to 4 people on the aircraft that's manned by 2 pilots. Then there's some drivers involved, obviously, to get them to the aircraft. Then at the donor site, there's people from the organ procurement organization, which is a whole nother group that's involved in this whole process, as well as any of the other procurement teams. So a donor can donate up to 8 organs. So you can only imagine how many people are actually in the OR that had to get this time so that everybody throughout the process can be there and the recipients can be ready for the transplant on the back end.
Yeah, 8 organs. I mean, that's potentially at least 8 surgeons, right? That might need to be on deck, ready for receiving these organs, and then having the receiving patient prepped. Patients, I guess, in the case of 8 organs, really logistical coordination problem, a huge one, just in that aspect. But the problem it seems like that you're solving is this being able to fly these organs to places where they need to be fast, quickly, and effectively. Can you kind
I
of walk?
I am through the flight component just because of my background, but we're getting involved in the ground transportation and commercial flights are involved as well.
And I would also add communication between all the participants, right? Because there has to be constant communication. Where are things in during surgery? Where are things after the organ has started to be recovered? Because that's when the clock starts ticking. They have to know where everybody is and so forth.
I could imagine a series of notifications, maybe a status alerts for each individual patient and organ, and any details necessary for that particular organ as well. So I'm sure very complicated. I'm curious, how many organs are actually transplanted or transported on a daily basis in the US, if you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. In 2024, 48,000 organs were transplanted total. So
And I'm wondering, what are the most common organs that are transported? You mentioned heart, but there's other organs maybe you can share.
So we're focused on all of the solid organs. The most transplanted organ is a kidney, and that's in the highest demand. And then there's also living donors that are able to donate kidneys as well as livers. We've really had our focus on hearts, lungs, and livers because those usually require the surgical team to fly out. Kidneys, oftentimes they're being shipped one way to the recipient. If not, they're in the same hospital.
And how fast do these organs need to arrive at their destination before it's too late?
Heart is the shortest cold time, and that's about 4 hours. Kidneys have the longest, and that's 24 hours. And then there's just lungs are a little bit longer than hearts at 6 hours, livers are 8 hours. So that's kind of the span that we're working with.
Not a lot of time. Obviously, that's a high pressure situation, but obviously very important for these patients. Maybe you can talk to us about some of the decisions that need to be made during this transport job. Obviously, many stakeholders involved, each one has important decisions to make. They obviously have their own experiences and skills and understanding of the industry, obviously, to make the best decision at the time. But are there ways that you've used your software to help them make those decisions or automate some decisions, create the dashboards containing the data to help them make the best decision? Can you talk to me about some of that?
Absolutely. So, just to reiterate, we are very much focused on transportation and communication. We are not making any of the clinical decisions, nor do we have the background to do so. So, ignoring all of that, like whether you're going to accept it for the recipient because it's the appropriate organ, we're really stepping in, looking at the mode of transportation, if it makes the most sense to use a ground vehicle versus a helicopter, depending on the traffic and risk management, as well as the weather, of course. And then also streamlining the route. So if they should really go to this closest airport because this is the availability there versus a different one that maybe is a little bit longer of a drive, but the runways are longer so you can get a faster aircraft there. As well as then within the communication, um, not necessarily decisions, but just getting everybody in the right place at the right time, which is, of course, of the utmost importance.
You can imagine how Uber transformed the passenger transportation business model. I feel like maybe that's what you're trying to do in part for the organ transportation industry, at least in the US. Would you say that's an accurate assessment?
A lot of the inspiration in terms of the UX and usability comes from the Ubers and Lyfts of the world. I'll let Chris talk more to the technology and the actual app.
Yeah, I mean, just from a transplant center's perspective, they're not travel agents, right? They shouldn't have to worry about the best way to get there. I just know I need to get from point A to point B. Here's my time considerations that I have to meet. Can you meet those? And those providers that of course meet the safety requirements of that transplant center should be able to say, yes, I can meet it. And here's how I'm going to do it. And there's things that they have to know, right? They have to know, okay, well, I'm transplanting not only a heart, but what piece of equipment is transplanted? How many people are going? And that equipment has the size. So can it fit through the door? Do I have enough place in the aircraft to actually store that? Do I have the communications that may be needed for using that equipment in flight and so forth? So there's all kinds of things that they have to know in order to say, yes, 100% I can do that. And then, oh, by the way, do I have pilot availability? What happens if they're on the ground too long and that crew has timed out? So can they provide a second crew or a second aircraft? All kinds of things. Because again, once that cold time starts, it's like, okay, we got to get it back.
Yeah, it's like an episode of 24 every time you're delivering an organ. I'm curious about pricing because, like Uber and Lyft, pricing is sort of dynamic and it changes depending on availability of the drivers, and in your case, maybe the availability of pilots, as well as the distance and other sort of variables. Um, how does your software platform integrate dynamic pricing?
Yeah. So this is where we are very much a startup and exploring different pricing modalities. Right now, we are really focused on dynamic pricing. That's something our platform takes into account. We have the data on what prices have been historically, what they look like for this operator, and we're able to take in their costs for this price, have some sort of explanation as to why it may surge if it's the middle of the night, there's no other potential aircraft, et cetera. And really showed the transplant center customer the transparency as to the pricing against standard prices.
Are your prices typically lower than the standard pricing that you're seeing in the market now? I can't imagine there's that many companies doing what you're doing. So I'm curious how you guys are priced.
Absolutely. And our pricing is able to be lower because of this decentralization that we're doing and incorporating many different private vendors into the mix and enabling them to really choose what price they want to charge on a case by case basis.
Yeah. And you mentioned decentralizing pilots and transportation vehicles. How are you sort of incentivizing new pilots or aircrafts to be part of your network?
That's a great question. I think the mission is very attractive to different people. It's great to do this altruistic mission, especially these flights are generally at night. That's when these aircraft may not otherwise be used. So both the economics make sense for the vendor as well as the personal mission behind it. I think everybody's always touched by the concept of saving a life, and that's truly what this is all about.
Absolutely. And I think it's super important that the mission maintains its integrity over time. It's really easy to lose sight of that, especially when profits become more important than patients' lives. How do you ensure all this data? A lot of it contains patient information. How do you ensure that it's secure and private in your database?
We definitely make sure that we follow HIPAA compliance. We have very little patient data because, as you can tell, the donor is generally deceased. There's not a whole lot of information we need regarding clinical or patient data. It's simply that we have an organ of this type at this hospital, and we have a patient that's going to receive that at this hospital. We've always made sure that we maintain HIPAA compliancy. We run in a HIPAA compliant cloud environment. We maintain end-to-end encryption so that data as it's being transferred through our system is always encrypted, the sensitive data. We provide regular security audits, making sure that we're adhering to all that. And again, just depend upon some of those secure cloud environments that have been tried and true for the last 20 plus years.
Thanks for sharing that, Chris. Appreciate that. I'm kind of imagining this application now. Is there like a helicopter or plane that you follow on a map similar to the Uber apps, or is that just in my mind?
No, so definitely, right? So because communication is critical, these people need to know, okay, I'm going to the airport. Am I going to be just sitting there? Is there a plane there for me? We can track where the aircraft is on the way back, the hospital that is going to receive the donation and implant that. They have to be ready. So they have to know, yeah, that plane's on its way and here's where it's at. And it hasn't been diverted. It's on track and it will arrive at a specific time. We need to have the OR ready and prepped, the patient ready and prepped, so forth. So there is a lot of visualization of data and a communication of that data as well. So,
yeah, that sounds really great. And I'm glad that you're taking the best practices of other consumer type of applications and applying it here into this really important industry. How does Pulse plan to integrate blockchain technology to ensure portability, security, and privacy of any sensitive data? I know Chris mentioned there's not a lot of patient data since the organ donator is typically deceased. I'm pretty sure you don't have blockchain currently within the tech stack, but I'm curious, is that something in your roadmap? Why or why not?
I probably didn't mention it in my opening and everything, but the last 4 years I've been at a blockchain-based startup, working for the last couple of years primarily in the Bitcoin world. But prior to that, worked with all the different blockchain technology, Solana, Ethereum, Cardano. As far as you're right, we don't have any blockchain now and nothing immediately planned, but we do follow a lot of those principles because of the decentralization. First and foremost, we want to add transparency to this process. That transplant center should just be able to make a request and that marketplace be able to come back and say, this is how we're going to have full transparency of what's the crew, what's their history, what credentials do they have and how are they verifiable? That safety of those traveling is of utmost importance. They don't want to have to worry about, am I going to make it back on this plane? They want to know. And that's where some of those verifiable credentials of the transportation provider. Yes, I know because, again, that hasn't been tampered with, right? That certificate that they have is from an authentic source and it's been verified by certified parties. I've worked with a company called ProCredX that does credentialing of surgeons and so forth. Another aspect that we haven't talked about that we want to get into is being able to rent a surgeon, in essence. If I need a surgeon to perform this, be able to do that. And again, being able to verify that that surgeon has the credentials to go and do what we need them to do. And then finally, the whole subdivision of assets. So we have a single task. We need to get a crew from here to there and back with an organ. And I, in essence, don't want to double spend anything along the way. I want to know that everything is covered. I have ground transportation where I need it. I have air transportation where I need it. I don't want to have accidentally two people doing the exact same thing. Some of the concepts around double spending, I don't want to have any of that. So,
Chris, that's really well said. I really appreciate that. And I think there's so many aspects of decentralized ledger technology that can help make the whole process more transparent, sort of like you said. I've actually interviewed Anthony Bigando, CEO of ProCredX, on Health Unchained before. I'll put that in the show notes for others to listen to later. And one thing you did mention is to be able to rent a surgeon and find a surgeon quickly in the right place. Is that part of Pulse Charter Connect, or something that maybe you're envisioning in the future to be part of it? Because that's really interesting.
That's in the roadmap. So that will be very exciting for your premium listeners. It is something that we are working on because it's really time consuming and difficult, the process that it currently entails with the recipient surgeon traveling to the donor site doing the procurement. There seems to be interest in the industry to utilize somebody in the local region to do the procurement on their behalf. So that's kind of the evolution of Pulse, is doing both the transportation as well as the surgical assistance.
Very interesting. And just for the audience to be clear, when you say procurement, that's basically the removal of the organ from the deceased body
Yes.
and then putting it in ice or any kind of equipment that it needs to be in to sustain it through transportation. Correct. Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Yes, of course.
One question I have for you both is, what have you learned about the industry since you founded the company that actually has surprised you?
I mean, the whole industry is incredible. I have worked with a charter company doing these flights. That was my introduction to it. But the more I learn about transplant, it's really amazing, the science and what we're able to do and the new technologies that are coming on board. I've really just enjoyed learning from all of these different clinicians. We are so far from what we were able to do in the past, and there's so much coming down the pipe. It's really cool to learn the different methodologies of procurement and storage and all of that.
Yeah. For me, it's just the whole process. I really had no experience with organ transplants and didn't even know that, oh, wow, my surgeon will actually fly somewhere, come back. I was like, I just assumed you go in and there's the organ and you're ready to go. Right. That to me was like, wow, there's a lot involved here. The more I talk to customers in these transplant centers, you're realizing that it's a fire drill almost every single time, making sure that everything works like clockwork so that the surgeons don't have to worry about anything. They just do their job. They focus on it. And so there's a whole bunch of people involved in this process that are trying to make it as easy as possible so that the surgeon doesn't have to worry about anything. So if we can impact that at all, that's remarkable for me.
And it sounds like you're already making a huge impact. So congrats on your success so far. This really is a one team effort to get the organ into the patient fast enough, and to the right patient as well. Since I have you on here, Chris, could you sort of describe the tech stack of Pulse Chartered Connect?
Yeah. Your typical in-tiered application. You got your web presentation layer, your application layer, and your data layer. Got to have security between all different layers. But the idea is, that there's different types of users of the systems, right? Some are definitely going to be more involved, the ones that are creating the request. But then a surgeon, all they simply want to do is just communicate with everybody. They want to let everybody know this is where we're at in the process and so forth. So having the ability to adapt to the different types of uses and users is critical. So being able to work across different environments, whether it's a mobile app or they're on a desktop sitting in the hospital, they're on an iPad on the plane, all these different mechanisms. And if they want to communicate, trying to make that as seamless for them as possible is going to be critical. And then there's times where, again, because time is of an essence, maybe you don't force them to remember a password, but use some sort of biometric to allow them to log into the system. You know it's them, and they're only able to see the things they should see. Tailoring that visualization, what do they actually see? They're not overburdened with a lot of information. Just give them what they need when they need it. So
that makes sense. Are you leveraging within your different layers any artificial intelligence to help streamline the communication, filter out noise from what's super important, just because there's so much going on?
Yes. Some of the things that we're looking at doing, especially in that communication, is how can we make that as easy for them to communicate as possible? So they shouldn't have to type in the OR, we've cross clamped, so forth. Maybe just give it a one word, speak to it, And okay, we know what to send to everybody, right? So use some sort of artificial intelligence to simplify that user experience for them, right? And then things like route optimization. So I need to go from point A to point B and back, right? But I also, oh, by the way, I got to go pick somebody up along the way. I got to pick this surgeon up. Being able to optimize the best way so that we don't have any bottlenecks to get that done. So those are some areas that are probably the most likely to have some sort of augmented intelligence in there.
Got you. I have to ask, are you both registered organ donors?
I just checked yesterday. I couldn't remember if I was, and I am. It's on my driver's license. Yes.
Same here. It's been really cool seeing people that learn more about our company from our personal networks and then hearing how they made sure they're registered as well. But I encourage everybody to register as an organ donor.
You hear that, folks? Make sure you check your IDs. If you aren't an organ donor, you can easily become one. Just sign up. It's very important for a lot of people that are currently seeking organs.
Absolutely.
Next question is related to regulations. I'm not very clear on the regulations for organ transplant or transportation. Do you see, or would you want any regulatory action to happen in the industry that you think would help the industry?
Yes, I think this is a massive topic within the industry right now. So there has been a lot of federal changeover, regardless of the actual administration for the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, and they created an IDIQ. So multiple vendors bidding on different contracts. But I think there's been a push for more data and more transparency, especially as the industry has a goal to get to 60,000 transplants by 2026, which is um, 60,000 deceased donor transplants. So the differentiator there makes it an even more impressive goal to hit it. So I'd say the push for transparency and data within the entire industry is super important in order to get all of us there and save more lives.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Actually, I don't know if you'll be able to speak on this at all, and I don't ask you to speculate or anything, but given the recent news of the crash that happened in DC between helicopter and a passenger plane, a military helicopter, do you know have any insights on that you would be willing to share with the community that we don't
Uh,
already know, maybe?
I, I don't have any additional insights. I think the discussions around air traffic control needing more controllers in the airspace, especially in DCA, which is a very difficult and very crowded airport, is really important. We just need to get more air traffic controllers. My husband was one for a little bit, and it's a very stressful job. So I think that's one of the things that's super significant there. I think there were a lot of other issues that came about, and we'll learn more from the NTSB. It's been interesting texting some of my old colleagues at the FAA to hear what's going on at headquarters and how they're all approaching this, because it's truly devastating for all of the people and families that were impacted by the crash.
Absolutely devastating. Hearts and prayers go out to everyone who was affected by this major tragedy. Moving on, I would like to ask for your outlook on the rest of 2025. Like, what do you think will happen in your industry? And if you want any personal insights you'd like to share.
Sure. In terms of the industry, so in order to achieve that 60,000 transplants by 2026, we really need to continue transplanting more organs. And I think new technologies like normothermic regional perfusion, or NRP, for whoever wants to do some research on that, will really increase the amount of organs available, as well as new equipment. I know Paragonix is coming out with new coolers in order to keep organs viable for longer. It's really a group effort. Our goal is to get up to 200 lives saved. We're really working towards that, growing the team, improving the technology so that alongside saving those lives, we're saving time, effort, and money for all of the different stakeholders that we work with.
Good question on that. You say 60,000 by 2026. How many organs or deceased people end up not being able to get transported and they just sit or decay? It's too late for them. Like, how often does that happen? Out of what's the denominator of that 60,000?
Yeah, so it's about 20% of organs go unused. It depends on the organ, et
Yeah.
cetera. But those are ones that could potentially be viable. It also is rare for somebody to pass in a way that their organs are even viable for transplant to start. But then there's a lot of other metrics from there to really look at which could have been used but was unutilized organ.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate that. Chris, anything to add?
No, no. Again, just involving the technology, right? So we started very small with a very pointed approach, and now it's just to expand our reach, expand our marketplace, and so forth, and make that as easy as possible because it's a process that you cannot get in the way. Right? If it makes it more difficult, it's not worth doing. We have to make this whole process very seamless. They shouldn't really even know that this is anything different. One of the things we got to do is talk to those surgeons. We got to see how they work and make the user experience fit within how they operate.
Absolutely. Very good points. Just a couple questions and then we can sort of wrap up. I really do appreciate both your time here today. What is the most influential book you've read?
Sure. So I'll keep it on topic. A woman, Amy Silverstein, wrote My Glory Was That I Had Such Good Friends. It was a woman that I believe she was undergoing her second heart transplant and really talking to the journey there. She's no longer with us, but the book was truly beautiful, showing the resilience of herself, of her friends, and just a more personal story about the entire transplant journey.
Thanks for sharing that.
And for me, I have an influential personal and an influential professional, right? So on the professional side, there's a book by a guy named Robert Riefstall that it's called Demonstrating to Win. And it's basically how do you walk your customers and people that you want to use your application? How do you walk them across that bridge that's scary to them and show them that their life can be better using your technology, right? So professionally, that has really impacted me of how do you talk to those customers and how do you you're not gaining their trust with nefarious things in mind. How do you actually gain their trust because you want to help them? Right? And then as a faithful man, the Bible has been what has guided my life over the last several years and taught me how to treat people, how to work with others, and how do I help people. So it's really guided me.
Wonderful. I appreciate that, Chris. Thanks for sharing. I'll include those in the show notes. So anyone who might have missed the books, I'll make sure to include author and title in the episode notes. Please check that out. What is your favorite way to stay physically active and fit?
I could start there. So my frail name is Canyon Man. I spend a lot of time. So Canyon Man Outdoors is a website that I show all the places that I've taken my kids and family, all the don't tell mom moments for hanging off cliffs and stuff. Anything outdoors, backpacking, hiking, fly fishing, rock climbing, pretty much any of that is what I do to stay physically fit.
I would love to get more outdoors like Chris. I'll have to teach me a thing or two. In college, I played water polo, so love just going for a swim. And then most recently, I joined a CrossFit gym, which I didn't quite see in my journey, but it's been really fun and I've really enjoyed the community there as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's always important. I like to remind my guests that being healthy is not just having an up-to-date medical record. It's also making sure you're eating well, physically fit, mentally there, and spiritually as well. Thanks for sharing all of that, both of you. And with that, we can conclude our episode here. I just want to thank you again, Laura and Chris, for being on the show and taking your time. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience before we end here?
If they want to find out more about Pulse, feel free to email us at info@pulsecharterconnect.com. Pulsecharterconnect.com is our website, and happy to hear from any of you. Thank you so much, Ray, for having us.
Hey everyone, we would greatly appreciate it if you can take a moment to share your thoughts about the show by writing a review and rating the show on your podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach a wider audience and enhance the overall quality of the show. Don't forget to encourage your friends, mentors, teams, and students to tune in and subscribe as well. Thank you for your support. Check out healthunchained.org and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you enjoy podcasts. Join the premium Health Unchained Supercast community by going to healthunchained.supercast.com, which gets you access to ad-free episodes, and join the official Telegram community group for the latest updates.